Hi guys, I'm Connel, hair art director for Davines, and welcome to my final week with Hairbrained. It's been 5 weeks of this cutting series. I've mostly been using the time to demonstrate combination cutting using razor and scissor on the same haircut. But tonight I thought I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to go back to not using the razor, just going to use my scissors, and I'm going to demonstrate a version of one of the first hair images that I ever created. It's quite a strong haircut, it's quite conceptual. It isn't going to be for everyone, but I thought let's end on something really strong, and all my favourite ideas aren't for everyone anyway. So, right, let's get going. This is the haircut that I'm going to be doing a variation of, and I'm going to talk you through, the thought process behind how I developed it, and I'm going to talk you through the technique. It's quite a simple technique, really, and then we're going to add a little bit of colour at the end. So, let's get going. The haircut is called the Plait cut. And what I mean by the Plait cut is that where I got the idea from was, if you ever see people when they're on holiday and they plait a section of hair through the top of their head, and it starts in here and it curves around, and it's kind of a scalp braid and it comes all the way around the front. And I saw a picture of somebody with this, and I thought to myself, right, that shape of the scalp plait is very, very flattering to that person's face, but it's flattering because it's a shape. It isn't necessarily flattering because it's a plait. So it made me think, okay, well, if it is just flattering because it's a shape, then I can create that same shape with a haircut. And this was very, very early on in my let's call it my creative career, where I was starting to think about doing a photo shoot. It was the first photo shoot that I'd done. So I had it in my mind that I wanted to create this plait shape, but with a haircut. So the way that I devised to do it was follow the exact pattern that the lady that I saw with the scalp braid across the head. Use that exact shape, but take a section the same width and cut it off right down as far as probably to around a centimetre, half a centimetre in length, to create this really short, strong panel throughout the centre of the haircut, sweeping across the front. It kind of separated the haircut into two sections, and took it really, really short. And I worked with a model who I cast her about 4 weeks before the shoot, and we coloured her hair 4 weeks prior to the shoot. And then on the shoot, we asked her not to recolour it, and then on the shoot, she arrived with a root, which is what we wanted. And then as I cut the shorter panel in, you had to hold this blonder hair around the edges, and the short piece of hair was cut into the root, so she had this dark plait shaped stripe through her head. And that is what I'm going to be doing today. So you can see I'm very, very quickly going off, just taking this hair off through the side. I'm doing it with the scissor over comb technique, starting from the top, because I always find, especially on longer hair, starting from the top helps me just be a little bit more organised, and I can pick the shape, because you can see through the side, if I spin around now, there's still a squareness to it. I haven't rounded up on the side, so when I start from the top, I can just start square and then drop down through here. If anyone, as with all the other ones, if I don't get a chance to answer any of the questions, or enough of the questions, then I'll make sure that I do in the comments section afterwards. So for anyone that's just arrived that hasn't seen what we've been talking about, I'm doing a haircut today, which is from the very first collection that I did, and the haircut is based around having a plait, a scalp braid shape across the top of the head, but done with a short haircut rather than using the braid. Because at this point in my career, when I was first developing this look, it was in around 2012. And basically, I was looking at the way that different shapes sat against someone's face. And what struck me was the fact that a shape, when it sits across someone's face, is a shape. It doesn't matter whether that shape is a plait, doesn't matter whether that shape is a colour frame, doesn't matter whether that shape is a short panel of hair. As long as it frames the face, it's going to have the same aesthetic result on that person's bone structure. And that's what led me to this idea. So I'll just quickly show the image again that we're working for, in case I noticed a couple of comments asking what we are working on. I'm going to be demonstrating a version of this haircut from my very first collection that I ever created. And the collection was called The Big Inning. It was a play on words around it going, I created a collection and I created a show around it, and it was a play on words around the fact that it was the beginning of my career, and I was hoping it was going to be a beginning as far as I was going to do a lot of good work and it was going to get a big response. So I'm just quickly flying through this scissor over comb, because all I want to do at this point is just remove the hair. If this was on a model, as it was in the image, I used clippers actually, and I just clippered all the sides off, because what the line and the shape that we're going to create isn't graduation, it's a solid line over the top of shorter hair. So quickly showing this off here. I'm going to do this from profile so you can see exactly how I work when I do the scissor over comb from top to bottom. In fact, that's not going to work on there, is it? Let's do it from this side so you guys can see. There, that's probably best. Yes. So as I said at the beginning, it's quite a conceptual haircut. It's not something that you might, it's not going to work on everyone's client. But I've always been a big believer of each cut that you do, it's about finding just as much about the bone structure of the model or the client, it's about the character. So is that person, has she got the right energy and the right character to pull off this look? Because she might look great with it, but she may not have the right attitude and the right interests. You know, her clothes need to fit it, the music she listens to, the bars and the clubs that she goes to need to all line up. It goes beyond just aesthetic. And so before I would do this haircut on the model that I ended up choosing for the image, or for any haircut for a show or a shoot, I'll always kind of interview the model about them just as much as I would do. So if I do a casting, say for a shoot, or like we did for the last Eternals collection for Davines, the casting process was much more than just like an aesthetic process. There was a process of discussing the concept of the shoot, discussing who the model was, whether she was going to be into it, and I find then that, I don't know, it results in the model or the person wearing the haircut rather than the haircut wearing them, which is, especially when you're dealing with quite conceptual, strong stuff like this, it's really, really important. Because the cut needs to make sense, because if it doesn't, then it's just strong for strong's sake, and I don't want to do that. And part of interviewing the models and finding the girl with the right character for a cut like this, it's about not being too result orientated. And what I mean by that is not thinking, okay, I want to create a collection for this because I want to enter this award or I want to get in this magazine or something. Because I think really people who I admire in other industries, whether it be film or music or art, fashion, they're not result orientated. It's the journey, it's the process. And to have a worthwhile result, you have to have a worthwhile journey. And I think doing that process that I like to do. Let me just move you around here. Doing that process that I like to do with the with interviewing the models and making sure that it's a character that you're creating rather than just a haircut on a model that's going to put a hat on and leave the studio and that's it. I find then that hopefully the work has more layers and has more interest, and then will hopefully stand the test of time. So that image that I just showed earlier, you know, I created that in 2012, but it's still one of the favourite images that I've ever done. And I think it's because I did that work ahead of time, finding the right girl, casting the right girl, aligning everything up rather than just saying, okay, you look great, the haircut will work on you, you'll have the haircut, let's go. I think those invisible things become a bit more visible over time, if that makes sense. So you'll see I've quickly just gone through here and scissor over combed the hair off. You'll notice that I'm higher on this side, and that's going to become apparent the reason why as I get through into working through the top. I'm just going to refine around the edge a little bit. For anyone that's just joining, I'm just going to quickly show the image again. For anyone that's just joined here, so this is the haircut that we're creating, and it's called the Plait cut. And it's basically, I saw a lady, she had a scalp braid through the front of her head, and the scalp braid flowed from the back of the hair and cut across the front. And what I realised was that the scalp braid looked good, but it was just the shape that looked good, and the shape complemented her face and it complemented her bone structure. So I thought to myself, well, a haircut can do that, it's just the shape. So what I'm going to do now is section off through the top, and I'm going to take a very, very short panel which mirrors the angle of the scalp braid that I saw, and it separates the haircut, and then we're going to go put through and put some graphic lines on top of that. Right. Just refining off this scissor over comb a little bit. Okay, I'm going to drop the mannequin. So this haircut pretty much lives and dies on the angle or the shape that you create this plait line with, which is what we're going to do right now. So I always put my scissors down for this bit because if I get it wrong, the whole haircut doesn't work. So forgive me if I go a little bit quiet while I make sure that I get the angle of the section right. Right, so first of all, you comb everything forward and let it fall as it naturally wants to fall. So I want a line that's starting kind of corner of the eye here, sweeping from the back and curving all the way around and cutting across the front. Right, I'm going to step through the camera, sorry. I'm going to come in here, and forgive me if I block the video just for a second. I just need to make sure that I'm getting the right angle. Okay. Right. I feel like I may have got it first time there, but let's see. So I section all of the other piece out of the way, because you don't want to start getting anything mixed up at this point. Right, I think we're good with this angle. So, you can see the line that we've taken. And you can imagine someone who has a scalp braid that starts here and curves all the way through, right? So, I'm just standing from a distance just to make sure I'm just going to refine that line a little bit. It's just if you're doing this haircut, it's really worth taking the time just to get this line perfect. It's more the curve of the line that needs to be correct. Okay, I think I'm happy with that. Right, so we have that line. Now I'm going to go through and take about 1/2 centimetre of this section. Mirroring the line. Okay. I'm going to spin around this way so you can see me cut the top, and I'm going to cut it as short as I can into my fingers. You see? I'm pulling it straight up from the head. You can see that first section of the line is coming through. How do you know where to section to the top? It's more about that I want the widest point of this curve to be just on the corner of this eye, and I want the point to finish over the top of this eye. So if you think of those two things, then it's kind of a way of connecting the dots. So as I come around to here, I just continue this section. You want to leave a veil out on the fringe because we're going to put quite a strong graphic fringe in. I'll come over the top to cut this. Okay, so we have the basic shape of that top section, right? But I want to get it to be really quite sharp and quite strong. So I go through with the scissor over comb technique now, and I take it down a little bit shorter, being careful not to bring any of the longer hair in from either side. This haircut, you need to keep this line isolated from the longer hair and the shorter hair. So if you have to go over and refine it and take your time a few times, it's worth doing, because if you pick any of the longer hair up and take that shorter, the angle of the line is spoiled and it doesn't look as strong. And I'm going to go over this a couple of times to really make sure that it remains clean. I've done this as well. The shape that I'm combining this plait cut with on here is obviously a strong, more conceptual shape. But I actually did it on a client once, and she had a really natural, like wavy, longer bob, and we just took this thin panel all the way through. So if she's changed her parting, you couldn't see it. But if she wanted to show it and she was going out, say, then she could change her pattern and show this really, really strong plait shape. So I think someone just asked, can I show the top of the section? So I'm going to do that now. So you can see it starts from here and then curves all the way around. And you can see straight away it separates the haircut in two. Okay, now the last thing I do on here is I'm going to hold the section down to really tighten in that long hair because I don't want to take anything in it, and then I just refine the outline of the short hair. Just put pressure on with your other hand so you can almost rest against the top of the longer hair because you're keeping it tight and keeping it out of the way. And the same for this side. I just go over the top, freehand, and make sure there's no stray hairs. Okay, so I basically have my plait line. Would I cut this on someone with a double crown? Yeah, I'll just maybe bring the plait cut a little bit farther forward so that it takes the crown out of the equation and just check the crown into the line at the back. So, we have the plait shape. For anyone that's just jumped in at this point, I'm just going to show the image again that we're working from so they have a frame of reference. So this is the image from one of the first collection that I created, and we're doing a version of it now. Right, so let's go in and let's get the line through the fringe. So, as with all of these cuts, I'm going to let this haircut dry naturally because I find when I'm doing something that's a little bit stronger and a bit more conceptual, if I let it dry naturally, it just has a certain softness to it that it wouldn't have otherwise. And especially with a haircut like this, it needs all the softness it can get. So I'm going to create, as this line's coming on a slight angle, I'm going to create a fringe line that's coming on a slight angle too. So sectioning the side away, pulling this fringe down into my fingers. Can we see that? Yeah. So you can see that fringe line starting to come in. Then I'm going to go through the side. I'm going to start to section off, and I'm going to continue the fringe length through into the side. So at this point, on mannequins and on people, this is where it's going to jump the most, if it is going to jump. So I'm going to cut this freehand so there's no tension. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm cutting a line. Let me spin that around so that you guys can see, forgetting where I am. I'm going to continue with a line that drops lower than this scissor over comb. And then the scissor over comb becomes apparent why we did it. Is because on these mannequin heads, I find if I start to graduate the side, say if I just started to build graduation and elevate the line, then it would sit too round, and I want this to sit a little bit flatter and a little bit tighter, almost like a little cap to the head. Let me come back around this side. Let's spin around here. You know, when I first did this image, when I first created the beginning collection, it basically came from this haircut was a bit of a watershed moment because it made me realise that, okay, I've seen an image of a lady with a plait on her head, but all that is a shape. And it made me understand that any hair imagery that I want to create, it's about making shapes align up with the person's face that look flattering and original. And if you can do both of those things, then the image is going to be a nice image. And after creating that shot, that was the first time I was a little bit inexperienced at the time, and that was the first time I'd really realised that that's what creating hair imagery was all about. It's easy to be original, and it's easy to create work that looks flattering to the person. But it isn't easy to be original and create work that looks flattering to the person, and that's what I struggled with for years. And I'm sure you speak to any hairdresser that does her imagery or more conceptual work on stage, they will say the same thing, that yeah, they can think of a million original ideas, but 99% of them don't look good. And it's the challenge is creating an original idea that looks good. So you can see I'm elevating a little bit each time, but not much, and I'm just creating a strong line, following through from that fringe that's on a slight angle, and then flow through into the side. So here we are with there. Right, now this side. I'm going to take an angle, a horizontal section, comb the rest of this out of the way. And I'm going to use, this is a good point to remember in this haircut, because I cut this section right to the hairline and I actually cut off the hairline here, these two sides will never meet, and that's what I like about this haircut, that this line separates them into two. So I'm going to use this as a guide, as where I'm going to create the point of here, knowing that they will never meet because of that line. So I'm going to drop, can you guys see that yet? I'm going to use that front section as a point, and then I'm going to cut a line that flows up. There we go. Because I want this line to almost sit here at the point and then drop up back through there. So you can see I'm leaving, for anyone that's looking closely, you can see I'm leaving the line. If I lean in here, you can see the scissor over comb is about here, and the line that I'm creating is about 2 centimetres, centimetre and a half longer than it. And that means that the line is just going to sit a little bit flatter and a little bit tighter to the haircut, rather than if I was to build graduation and then it all starts to look a bit round, a bit heavy, and then you have the shaved line through the middle, and I find then it starts to look a little bit more unflattering, where with the shaved plait shape running through the top, and then this line that's sitting tighter and flatter to the head, everything just seems to flow a little bit better. So I'm going to fly through here now. I'm elevating a small amount each time, but not much. It's been quite nice actually going back to one of the first hair images that I created, one of the first ones that I created that I actually liked, and figuring out, trying to remember all the ways that I did it and the shape that I created and all the problems that I had when trying to do it. It all kind of came back over the last few days when I was going over the technique again. Just refining off these little pieces here so that they don't meet. Right, so at this point now, it's just parallel sections all the way through, bringing that down. So I'm going to go a little bit faster through here so we can get to an interesting part through the front. You'll notice as well, it's a technique that I've always done after every section. So I'll show you through here. I go through scissors and then I switch to the wide teeth of the comb and I come back and then I come down, and I can instantly see if the shape that I'm creating is working, because if I switch to the wide teeth and come back and comb down, if I've missed my guide, if I've elevated too high, if I've elevated not enough, then something will kick or it'll move or it won't sit under nicely, and I'll instantly know to go back and kind of refine what I'm doing. So you can see the line that we're creating through there. So it's just a nice tip. Cut through the fine teeth, spin to the wide teeth, come back, come down, and you'll see your line straight away. I saw a question a little bit before. Someone asked me about the scissors. I'm using the little black scissors from M&P. M&P are based in London, and they have a salon in Marylebone. They do great education, and they sell these little beautiful scissors. And friends of mine that run it told me about them, and they're very nice. For anyone, I've always been a big fan of scissors that are as small and as pointy as possible. I almost want them to feel like an extension of my hand, and these do. They're really, really good. Okay, so you can kind of see that line that's separating through the plait. So now we're going to go through the back and start to check this in. So I'm going to go through diagonal section, comb it onto the line. Just leaning in here to cut this so you guys can see. Comb it on the line that I want to create and take that off. Remembering that we're not cutting to the scissor over comb that we created before. We're creating a line that's longer than that so everything sits nice and flat. Diagonal section again. I'm going to start to round this line off. Elevating a little bit. And just scattering this and just seeing how it wants to fall naturally. So someone asked a little bit earlier about the double crown. This is where the double crown had obviously come into play, and that's why that if there was a very, very jumpy double crown, I'd make sure the plait started a little bit farther forward so it stays away from any jumps or movements, because if I was to do the plait shape over a double crown, then it started to jump or not sit neatly, it spoiled the overall flow of the haircut. So I'm just letting this fall where it wants to go. Seems like it's going to go over here. So when you're doing a haircut like this, or any haircut, it's just about just kind of listening to the hair a little bit and finding out where it wants to go. If I'd have tried to force that into a line or a shape that I had in mind then through the back, it wouldn't have gone well. It would have started to jump, but just allowing that to jump across like it wanted to means that if this was a client, she's going to dry her hair naturally, it means that it's going to sit in the right position for her. I like to impose myself as little as possible on the hair, and when I do that, I find that the result is the truest it can be, really. So quickly we're going to go through the underneath, and I'm going to just take this off. I'm quite happy for it to be quite neat and sharp through the back. And what I'll probably do afterwards, before when it's drying naturally, I'll just go through the outline and refine it. I don't want to use the points of the scissors because I'm quite happy for it to be quite sharp and quite jagged. So I just want to talk a little bit about the front. So you can see how we've got this little hidden short section, right? I want this to separate through here, so I'm not quite happy. There isn't enough of a separation at this point. So I'm going to take a little bit more, this piece, and I'm going to bring this, I'm going to section this out of the way, the fringe, because it's imperative that that stays. But this is going to create a little bit more of a separation. So I'm going to go through with the comb, I'm just going to pick it up, and I'm going to bring it into there, and then I'm going to freehand it to make sure it's nice and clean. Okay, and that'll just create a little bit more separation through those two sides. Okay, so this fringe is drying a little bit naturally now, which I quite like, but I'm going to go in and just refine the line. Just freehand, because I don't want to put any tension because it'll start to spring up. So yeah, try it. Try and find a client with this haircut, even if it's a client like the girl I was saying before who has a bob, right? Just try and on the face of it, it seems quite strong and things, but if you explain it's just a centimetre or even half a centimetre of hair, just that you take off short, it can easily be covered by the parting. It looks cool if the person, or her or him, have the right personality, it'll look cool. Okay, I'm gonna just refine a little bit more. There we go. There's the separation that I want. It was just joining in a little bit too much. So for anyone that's just joining now, I'm going to quickly recap again with the image. So this cut's called the Plait cut. It came from this haircut, which was one of the first hair images that I created, and the idea came from me seeing somebody that had a scalp braid across the front of her head, starting at the crown and sweeping across the front. And the shape was very, very flattering to the person's face. And it got me thinking that it wasn't the plait that was flattering to the person's face, it was the shape of the line that the plait had created that was flattering to the person's face. So I thought, well, let's push the envelope a little bit and put your finger into the fan, and let's see if I can create the same shape as the plait created, but with a really short, sharp panel of hair. And I think it did, because I was saying earlier, I did the haircut in 2012 for that image, and I think it stands the test of time, and it's one of my favourite cuts, one of my favourite images that I've done. So, at this point now, you might have remembered at the beginning of the haircut, I was saying that with the model in the image, I cast her about 4 weeks ahead of the shoot, because So I cast her, we bleached her hair up, and then I asked her to go away. And then about 4 weeks' time, she came back to the shoot, and she just had this much root, and it enabled us to cut that off and create, and that's what created this dark line that went all the way through. And I think kind of anticipating what the colour's going to be like is quite an interesting way to approach colour for a shoot, to colour ahead of time and let it grow out, is what we did. So, obviously I have not had time to let this block grow out, so I'm just going to paint a dark line. I'm using View charcoal, equal parts with Ten Activator. I'm going to go through and just paint the line a little bit darker. So if we come in here, I'm just going to have to be very, very careful and really take my time. I'm just using the tip of the brush with a very, very small amount of product on. And flattening the longer hair with my hand underneath, just like I did when I was refining the line of the haircut. So just painting the root in that which we created on the model over a month period of time. Which was quite a nerve-wracking month because she was quite a busy model and we had to see if she was actually going to be as good as her word and not get her hair recoloured in that month. But no, she turned up to the studio with 1 centimetre of dark hair, we cut it and we got the line. So. Okay, right, so I'm going to comb this longer hair out of the way so you can still see the shape of the haircut when we finish. So here we have the Plait cut. Just comb that out of the way. Okay, and like with all of these cuts that I've been doing for Hairbrain each Monday evening, I'm going to let it dry naturally because I think a haircut like this, where it's a little bit stronger and a bit more conceptual, when you let it dry naturally, it just has a lightness to it that it wouldn't have if I spent 20 minutes wrap drying and making sure it was all kind of ironed to within an inch of its life. So I still want it to have a kind of relaxedness to it, even though it's super strong and super kind of conceptual. But you can see in here, I'm going to tilt her head. So you can see through here, and the line disappears through this side, and then my favourite part of the cut. Let me just tighten this in. My favourite part of the cut is the fact that here, the two sides never meet because this hairline's taken away. So, what I'm going to do now is let the colour develop, get that rinsed off, let it all dry naturally, and then a little bit later tonight I'll post the final image in the comment section. So, and I'll also go through the comment section, and if there's any questions that I've missed, which I'm sure there is because I was quite concentrating on that, then I will go through this evening and answer them all. So thank you for watching, I really appreciate it. I want to thank Davines Education and Davines North America for setting this series of haircuts up, and I want to thank Hairbrain, of course, and Gerard and Kelly and all the guys, Courtney there, because yeah, it's been 5 weeks of doing a haircut, this time every Monday night, and I think I'm self-isolating at home, as I'm sure most of you are, and it's been great to have that focus of every week we're doing that haircut, and I've really enjoyed it. So thank you very much. You've all been a great audience with really great questions and very positive response, so it's much appreciated. I'll post the finished image a little bit later on. So stay cool, keep out of trouble, and I'll see everyone again soon. Thanks.